Good Sunday morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Welcome to Sunday Morning Futures. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Today, breaking news from former President Donald J. Trump. I sat down with the 45th President of the United States when he told me he has not yet made a final decision on whether he'll participate in the upcoming GOP primary debate next month, but that there will likely be future members of his potential cabinet on that stage should he win the 2024 election. Here's part one of my interview from President Trump's Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey. President Trump, thanks so much for sitting down with us.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great to see you. I want to begin with the state of play of this election, with now the election over a year away and the first GOP primary debate a month or so away. Will you be on that stage? Are you participating in the upcoming debate?
Well, you know, it's quite an easy question normally. Ronald Reagan didn't do it, and a lot of other people didn't do it. When you have a big lead, you don't do it. And we have a lead of 50 and 60 points in some cases, and some of these people are at zero. Ron DeSantis, as I call him, or DeSanctimonious, is down to, he's in the teens now, and I'm at 50 and 60 and 65, and even I saw one today at 70. And so you're leading people by 50 and 60 points, and you say, why would you be doing a debate? It's actually not fair. Why would you let somebody that's at zero, or at 1 or 2 or 3, be popping you with questions?
Well, I mean, do you see any risk that if you don't show up, Ron DeSantis has a good night and it cuts into your lead?
Or somebody else has a good night and cuts into his lead. Because that's what's happening. He's going down and a couple of them are going up. I think Vivek has done a very good job, frankly. I think some others have done a good job. So I haven't really made up my mind.
Is there anyone on that stage you see as potential running mate? As your VP?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think you have some good people on the stage, actually. I think you have some very talented people. I've been impressed by some of them. Some of them I'm very friendly with, actually. A number of them called me up, not to ask for permission, but sort of to ask for permission, to say they'd like to do it. A number of the people up there, I'm not going to embarrass them by saying who, but no, I think you have good people. I think you have good potential cabinet members, too. Actually.
Who is that?
Well, I don't want to mention that. I think I can't.
Do you see yourself perhaps with the Senator Tim Scott?
I think he's a very good guy. We did opportunity zones together. It's never been talked about. It's one of the most successful economic development things ever done in this country. And Tim is very good. I mean, I could see Tim doing something with the administration, but he's right now campaigning, and I'm sure Tim and everybody else would say, I'm only interested in one. But Tim's a talented guy, and you have other very talented people.
Do you have a plan to get independents and suburban women to believe that your policies will make their lives better?
Yeah, it's called safety. It's called the border. It's called a strong military. It's called low taxes and low interest rates so you can buy a home. It's called keeping low-income housing out of the neighborhood of somebody that's very proud of their house in Westchester, New York, and they don't want to see their house value crash, which I did previously. But it's really about safety, and it's about low taxes, and it's about not going into ridiculous wars. You would have never had the war with Ukraine and Russia had I been involved. You would have never had this talk with China going into Taiwan. Just wouldn't have happened. And it didn't happen. Actually, even the Democrats say, well, whatever you want to say about them, it wouldn't have happened.
Do you believe Joe Biden will be the Democrat candidate in 2024?
I guess so. I mean, look, I watch him and I listen to him, and you sort of hold your breath and you say, is he going to finish the sentence? I don't know. I guess he is. Look, they have a Democrat machine. They have a lot of votes that are automatic to a Democrat, even though they shouldn't be. Normally you'd say they have the union votes, but I think I have a lot of union votes, too. I get tremendous in the car industry. I'm far better than the Democrats. And I said to everybody, you're losing your industry. It's all moving to Mexico and to China. And I think the workers vote for me. I think they'll vote for me much more than the union leaders who are indoctrinated into the Democrat Party. But no, I think that Biden will probably be the candidate if he can make it.
Well, the Democrats don't want to do debates. I know Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. want to debate. What do you think about that?
Well, I understand why he doesn't want to do it. I mean, I truly understand why he doesn't want to do it. But they are, there's a big difference. Although, in the case of RFK, I've seen polls where he's at 20%. That's not bad. But I understand why he doesn't want to do that. Look, when you're running for office and you have in his case, let's say he has a 30 or 40-point lead. Why would he do it? Now, people are going to say, well, he can't do it. I actually think he can't do it, if you want to know the truth. I don't think he's capable of doing it. But why would he do it? Especially because of that. Why would he do it? If he's got a 30 or 40-point lead, which is what he's got, I mean, I don't think RFK expects that he's going to be debating. He's a very smart guy, by the way. I don't think he expects to be debating Biden.
You've spent time with him, RFK. Tell me about him.
I have.
Is he a formidable competitor?
He's a very smart person, yeah. I know a lot of the members of that family, and, you know, he's a very smart guy. And he's hit a little bit of a nerve. I think he really has. And a lot of Democrats I know want to vote for him. But again, if he's at 20% and if Biden has a big lead, number one, Biden can't debate him because he's not capable. And number two, why would he debate him? For that reason, but also, why would he debate him if he's probably got it locked up? I don't see RFK Jr., I don't see him getting the nomination under any circumstances.
If there's anything that you could look back on in 16 that you think maybe you want to do differently this time around?
Well, the mistakes would be that a lot of people, for instance, say you should have been softer. But I was under siege by people that were very dishonest. If I was soft, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Believe me, I wouldn't have been able to finish out one of the most successful terms as president, to a point where it was so successful that I'm leading by 50 points right now. You know, I mean, that wouldn't have happened. The mistake would be people. I mean, I wouldn't have put a guy like Bill Barr in. He was weak and pathetic. I wouldn't have put Jeff Sessions in. There are some people that I wouldn't have put in. You know, most people were good. But I had some people, we had Esper, I didn't like him. He was incompetent, I thought. We had other people I didn't like.
Why did you put them in the job then?
Because every president, you put somebody in, you think they're good. But one thing that has happened, and I find it very interesting, and this is the way life goes, I put people in, I was there 17 times in Washington, D.C. in my whole life, okay? I never stayed overnight. The press actually reported 17. I don't know if it's right, but it's probably pretty right. I never stayed overnight, ever. And then all of a sudden, I'm the president of the United States. And it's like a different society. I was New York, and, you know, it was a different thing. So I didn't know people. I became president. I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue with our first lady. I had 250 motorcycles. I had armies. I had everything. I said, do you believe it? We're president. Take a look. This is wild, right? But I never was involved in that. And
so you didn't know what to expect?
No, I didn't know the people. I know the people now better than anybody's ever known the people. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the dumb ones, the smart ones.
Well, you didn't drain the swamp like you said you would. You didn't drain the swamp.
I did. I fired Comey. I fired a lot of people. A lot of the people I fired. I fired Comey very early. And, you know, there was a question as to whether or not you could. But I fired Comey. If I didn't fire Comey, I don't think I would have been able to serve out my term, because that was a plot. And, you know, these other guys that are running, they think, oh, well, you know, they're going to go nice and smooth. No, they'll create phony stories on them. They'll create their own Russia. These people are sick. Guys like Adam Schiff, he's a sick person. I mean, he's really a sick. They make things up, and then you have to spend time getting out of it. They do it now.
But he may become a senator.
He may become. Isn't that a crazy thing? Well, maybe not. He's running against some people that are much better than him. He's a sick person. He made up a thing on Russia, and Ukraine, where he actually talked about my call with President Zelensky. He didn't know we had the call taped. Fortunately, it was taped. And he made up a speech. He made a speech in Congress about what my call was, where he was actually reading the speech of what I said. And then when I released it, I said, you know, we happen to have a tape of that. It was a total lie. I said he ought to be prosecuted for what he did. But when you go to Congress, believe it or not, you can say anything you want. You don't get prosecuted and you can't get sued. And I think it's terrible. But, you know, this guy's got, I mean, he's very sick people. Look, if they would use their evil genius to make America great again, it would be great.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.